If you want to create long-lasting volume in your hair, it is a huge mistake if you don't know what I'm about to share. Buckle up, folks. We're gonna have a chat. What's that? Look, I know you have seen people talking online and always telling you about what product to buy that's gonna create all the volume in the world and it's gonna solve all of your volume problems. And I'm actually not throwing shade on people for doing that. We all need to be sharing what products are functioning well for us. But you've gotta know these things so that you actually get the results from whatever product you're using. And look, let's be honest, I don't wanna see one more product die in your graveyard of used products that didn't work. It's under your sink right now. You know you got it. You know it's there. I've got so many products under my sink. But anyway, I digress. The first thing that you must understand is that volume is not just and solely created by root lift. There's so many like buzzwords that go around, and I think root lift is one of the biggest terms that I hear behind the chair when it comes to creating volume. I know I have talked about it in my videos before, and I know you've heard people say, hey, you want volume, create root lift, or this product creates amazing root lift. And it's not that root lift isn't part of creating volume. The thing is, root lift is like 1/3 of what creates volume. It's root lift plus from the roots through the midshaft and through the ends, we want to see bend. And so what I'm going to share with you today is going to be explaining all of the other things that have to happen so you actually add to that root lift and get the true volume. So the first thing that you have to understand is that if you don't use a foundational product to create volume, you're just not going to get it. I don't know if tell me if you're the type of person that does this. Are you the type of person that like wants volume, but you don't like the texture of product in your hair? I know that so many clients I have feel like that, right? And I get it because I don't love the texture of product in my hair either. I use it, but I still would prefer that my hair would just be like nice and soft, but look the way I wanted to look. Unfortunately, that just rarely ever happens. That doesn't happen. So you have to get comfortable with the fact that you're gonna need to use some product and therefore feel some product in your hair to actually get long-lasting volume. Now I'm gonna share a tip later on that's gonna explain like how you can actually minimize the feeling of that texture in your hair, what you can actually do to take some of that texture out. We'll get to that. But the first thing we need to understand is just, well, which product do you use? Because there are so many different kinds. And I'm gonna kind of umbrella statement this a little bit, so kind of work with me. This isn't true for every single product, but just so you know, when you walk into a store, you're basically gonna be looking at 2 to 3 different kinds of products when it comes to volumize. You're gonna look at a mousse, or you're gonna look at gels/creams. Now, a mousse, more often than not, is gonna feel much lighter in your hands. It's gonna feel much lighter when you apply it. And it's also gonna feel much lighter in your hair. You're not gonna feel quite as much product with it, but you will also not get as much control or volume from it. On the other hand, you've got the gels and the creams, and they're very similar. They both definitely feel more dense in your hands. They feel more dense when you apply them, and you're definitely gonna feel more product in your hair once they're in your hair and dry. But they're also gonna be likely to give you more control and therefore more hold of the bend, which means more hold of the overall volume. Now, you might have heard from some people that you should mix and match these or use them together. Maybe use the styling cream or the gel at your roots to get a little bit of root lift and bend, but then in your midshaft to the ends where you want it to feel a bit softer, you use a mousse or something a little bit lighter. That absolutely can work. Definitely not saying that you shouldn't try that, but there are also products out there, like one that I may be creating right now. I'm not saying that I am. It's a gel mousse kind of thing, right? Or like a little bit, kind of does both of those things. So what you need to do is recognize that, look, whatever I put on my hair needs to be on my hair, every hair on my head, roots, midshaft to the ends. Now, when you can do that, you've got a foundation to truly create the structure or the shape in your hair that gives you volume. Make sense? So for you, it's gonna be up to you as to how you mix and match those products to kind of ride that line of, how do I get enough texture in my hair that I get the volume I want and the control, but not have so much that I don't like the texture in my hair? Tell me, are you the type of person that when you get out of the shower, tell me if you do this, be honest, do you get out of the shower and then wrap your hair up and then do your makeup and then take your hair down out of the towel wrap and start applying product? You do it? Do you do it? You do that, don't you? Yeah, you do, because most people do. So here's the thing though, when you wrap your hair up in a towel like that and then apply makeup, it's gonna take you a little time to apply the makeup or do whatever else you're doing. In that time, your hair is drying, but it's not drying evenly. It's gonna be drier in one area, maybe even a little bit more damp in another area. Maybe it's dripping wet at the ends that didn't get wrapped up completely in the towel. Wherever you apply product, it's going to distribute differently, and therefore you're gonna get different reactions from that product depending on where your hair was dry or wet. So what you'll end up with is your overall hair shape isn't getting the results that you want. You don't really know why, and you're gonna attribute it to the fact that the product didn't work. And that would be a fair guess if you didn't realize that it was just because the product wasn't distributed evenly and therefore you were getting different results from the same product on your one head. So here's what you're gonna do instead. You're going to get out of the shower, towel blot the dripping moisture out of your hair so that it's damp. You're gonna then apply your product from roots to ends. If you need to comb it through, that would be a great idea to make sure that you get equal distribution. Now, if you've got curly hair, you're planning on diffusing your hair dryer or letting it air dry. You're not gonna obviously comb through it, okay? You could maybe with your hands, you're gonna scrunch it in. But the key here is just understanding that you wanna make sure it's on every hair on your head. Then you can wrap your hair up and do whatever else you need to do. The other thing I see people do a lot of times is they just don't use enough. They'll start with a little bit, they kind of work it through the back. They don't realize that's not even close to enough to actually get through your ends. And then you get the feeling of that product in your hair, but you get none of the volume that it's really able to create. And then your concern is, well, I don't want to add more because then it's going to feel like there's even more. I'm already not getting the volume that I wanted. It just means it's going to be flatter and I'm going to feel like there's more stuff in my hair. So this product is straight to the graveyard. I know 100% this has happened to you because I've seen it like 1,070 times. I would legitimately do the same thing if I didn't know the difference. So what you should be doing, especially when you're starting using a product your first time, is you want to overuse it, right? You really want to learn your boundaries. You're going to saturate the snot out of your hair. Saturate the snot? Why is that a thing? That's gross. You're going to saturate your hair completely with the product. And then you're going to see, okay, is this feeling like there's too much stuff in it? I'm getting volume maybe, but is the volume worth the feeling? And you might find that it is, or you might find that it isn't. Now, if it isn't, don't worry. Like I said, I got your back. Share a little secret here in just a sec. Okay, now you're going to start drying your hair. And I know, speaking of root lift, you have also heard this. Tilt your head upside down. Dry it so that you curve some root lift. I know you've heard that because if you've ever watched my channel, I've probably told you that. I've told my clients that. Why we do that is because you're just trying to get the hair up off the scalp. You just don't want it to be laying flat against the scalp while it's drying because as it's drying, it's forming its shape. I know that you've probably experienced this at some point in your life, like when your hair was longer maybe, right? And you flip it from one side and you flip it to the other side and you're like, oh, it gets all this great volume. That's why it does it, because your hair is used to going one direction. Now you're getting that little bit of bend because it wants to go that direction, but it's forcing it to go the other direction. You're getting a little bit of bend at the roots and you're getting a little bit of root lift. Now that you've got your hair basically dried, you're gonna do something else too. Are you gonna take either a brush, a round brush, maybe an air brush, right? A blow dryer brush mixed in one. Maybe you're gonna use a flat iron, curling iron, whatever you do. But there's one key thing that I see people do all the time that I really want you to stay away from. This is really gonna help you keep the volume that you created. Body mechanics is going to make it very natural for you to want to put a brush in your hair. For instance, you're drying it and you're down here. What you're doing is you're pulling those roots that you just gave volume, you're pulling them flat. And now you're taking out the volume that you just encouraged. Now you can see this side I did on Deanna's hair with the blowing down, but this side I actually lifted those roots up while I was round brushing it, and you can see the difference in volume right here. But this goes for rollers or even waving if you're doing it with a curling iron. All of these things actually matter. If you're using something that you're rolling down into the hair, making sure that the root is facing away from the scalp and not down flat against the scalp. This makes a huge difference in the actual amount of volume that you end up with. You remember back in the day when either you used rollers or maybe your mom used rollers? The reason that that worked so well to create volume was because either the rollers would be hot or your hair would be hot going into the roller. And then while it's stuck into this bend shape, it's cooling down. And the thing that we have to understand is hair is like a metal, right? When it becomes hot, it becomes pliable. But when it cools down, that's when you're locking whatever shape you have into it. After you get done round brushing it, you take that round brush out, now you've got the shape that you want. Leave that alone. Do not comb through it with your brush or with a hand or anything else. Allow it to cool down, move to the next section, and then you're gonna get that hair that you just added into to actually still have the bend that you put in it. Now, a second ago, I told you I was gonna share a little tip on how you can actually take some of that texture out of your hair so you don't feel as much product in your hair. If you're a person that dries your hair with the round brush, you roll the brush up and then you dry it like this, you're gonna find that you'll feel that product in your hair a lot more than if you instead move that brush through the hair while you're round brushing it and kind of finishing it and adding that bend. Now, in just a second, I've got a bonus tip for you that you're not gonna wanna miss because I definitely am aware that even with all of the tips I'm sharing you today, you're still gonna go outside and in some climates, humidity, for instance, your hair is gonna end up flattening out. I've got a trick for that, so give me a second, we'll get there. But the last thing that you wanna pay attention to when you're drying it, you wanna make sure that you add too much bend to begin with. I know it's kind of weird, right? Because you style your hair for how you want it to look when you leave. Don't want it to look weird and then go and hope that it looks okay when you get wherever you're going. But let me ask you this. Have you ever heard somebody, or have you ever experienced yourself, a situation where you had volume in the morning and then you went outside and you went through your day and you're like, man, it started off fine, but now it is way, way too big. No, that's never, ever happened to anyone, ever. That's not a thing. That doesn't happen. Volume, even best laid plans, even if everything I'm telling you today, will still fall out a little bit. So it's really important that we add more than we need. The probability is really high that by the time you get where you're going, it's gonna be much closer to what you want. Now, let's imagine the worst case scenario. You show up at work, you look in the rearview mirror, you're just like, whoa. I don't even know, like a clown hat, or like this balloon, or like what just happened, right? Fact is, we all know that we can pull volume out of our hair. But if you show up at work, you look in that rearview mirror, and your hair is flat to your head, you're not getting more volume in your hair then. It's not like it's just gonna be all of a sudden super easy to encourage more fluff and you're good to go. Okay, now I promised you a bonus tip and I'm gonna give you one. You love humidity, don't you? It's like your favorite thing ever. It is absolutely the worst thing for hair volume. In a very simplified explanation, the moisture levels in your hair are just trying to balance with the moisture levels that are outside. If you know that you're gonna spend a lot of time outside, maybe you're heading to the beach or something, or you're gonna go hang out and it's gonna be humid that day and you want your hair to look its best, dry your hair either outside or in your bathroom with the window open so that your bathroom air and the outside humidity are equal. Then don't go and spend a lot of time inside before you get outside. Get outside and your hair will last much longer. Try one of the tricks, tag me on Instagram, let me know you did it so I can shout you out, give you a high five, and then watch this video right there.